You Booked It, episode 30. Hey, entertainers and performers of the world. I'm your host, Dane Reese, and welcome to You Booked It, where I chat with inspiring entertainers 7 days a week. By digging into their journey, we're going to discover everything you need to do to be a successful entertainer. You know, because training usually skips that part about how to actually make your skills work for you in the real world. Fellow entertainers, my drive here at You Booked It is to share the inspiring and incredible journeys of successful entertainers. We are here to support your journey. So go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join the You Booked It email community where we dig deep into truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you book that next audition, submission, or gig. If you enjoy this free podcast, please show your support and search for You Booked It on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app where you can subscribe so you don't miss an episode, leave a rating and review. And to show our appreciation for your, fingers crossed, 5-star rating and review, I will give you a shout out on an upcoming episode. And now, let's do this. Alrighty, let's get started. I am excited to introduce my guest today, Sasha Weiss. Are you ready for this, Sasha?
I am ready.
All right. Sasha received her MFA in musical theater from San Diego State University and her BFA in musical theater with an emphasis in acting and vocal repertoire from the Boston Conservatory. Some of her New York credits as a performer include Jerry Springer the Opera at Carnegie Hall, Colette Collage, I and Albert, and the Grand Tour, all three at the York Theater, and Carrie the Musical. TV credits include ABC's What Would You Do? Commercials include the Jenny Craig national commercial with Mariah Carey. Sasha wrote her thesis on the art and the venue of cabaret and has written and performed her own cabarets in New York City, San Diego, and LA. Sasha has been a faculty member in the musical theater programs at Pace University, Marymount Manhattan College, San Diego State University, and the American Musical and Dramatic Academy, also known as AMDA. Sasha is also a proud member of Actors Equity Association. Sasha, that is a quick intro of who you are and what you've done,
Yep.
but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Fill in the gaps, if you will. Who you are, where you're from, where you're currently calling home, and a little bit more about what you do as a professional in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, great. I'm originally from Encino, California. I'm a Valley girl, born and bred. I currently am living in San Diego, but as you said, I went to college. I left LA and went to college in Boston when I was 17 in 2003. And then I was an East Coaster for the next 9 years and spent 5 years in New York, worked a lot, and then decided, I think I'm going to teach. And so I went to grad school in San Diego, fell in love with San Diego, went back to New York for 5 years, and now I'm back in San Diego because I couldn't stay away. It's just great here. As a performer, I've done, some shows, some concerts. I've done, honestly, most of the work is new readings and workshops and my own shows. And I used to teach theater to kids like Rock and Roll Babies and Mommy and Me classes. And I thought I could teach college too. So I became a professor. So I still perform and I also teach and coach as well.
Fantastic. And I love San Diego. It is hands down one of my favorite cities in the
Ugh,
States.
it's the best.
All
It's
right,
really the
well,
best.
let's move to the next section. And Sasha,
Great.
I am a sucker for a good quote. What is your favorite quote you'd like to share with our listeners?
Okay, so I picked two. They're both very short, but they're both quotes from people that I personally know. Not so much like, I was thinking about that great Dr. Seuss quote and like things like that. But then I was like, you know what? Let's get real.
Yeah.
So one came from my therapist in New York City. That's right, therapy is for everybody. And his quote was, "If not this, something better." And for me, I think that just like helps me deal with life's disappointments and trusting that if not this, something better, something different is going to happen. And then my other is from an acting teacher of mine and a mentor and friend, Luis Carrazzo, who said, "Invent nothing, deny nothing," and that those two have been kind of great quotes for me.
You kind of explained how the first one applies to your life and things like
Yeah.
this, but how expand on the second one.
Yeah. So, invent nothing, deny nothing is sort of like an acting philosophy that I've taken on as an educator. And also, it's just a really good life kind of lesson. Like, you can't create something within yourself that doesn't already exist. And you can't also push things down that are actually there. So, both of these things, if you do both, either of those things, it's going to lead to like an inauthentic performance or an inauthentic, character, either in play or in your life. So I think it's just important to be where you are at all times and embrace the good and the bad of that and be authentic and honest about it.
Absolutely. And I if I'm correct, you also mean kind of to not try to hide from what is there and to embrace what you are and what it is there. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's all
No,
the right stuff. It's all the good stuff.
if it's happening with you, then it has to exist because it other if you don't acknowledge it, you will become inauthentic, in
Absolutely.
those moments. Yeah.
Great. Well, let's move on to this next section. And Sasha, of course, you're an entertainer, a professional in the entertainment industry. I'm an entertainer, and I think that you would agree that this industry is one of the most subjective, brutally honest, personally emotional industries in existence. And you know as well as I that in order to create and to have a successful career in this industry like you're having now, takes a lot of dedication and hard work. And while, of course, yeah, there are a lot of highs and excitement and fun,
Mhm.
we also have to deal with our fair share of obstacles and challenges and failures. And they're inevitably going to happen. And we're going to have to move forward through them if we want to continue being in this industry professionally.
Yep.
So tell us, what is one key challenge, obstacle, or failure you've experienced in your career, and how did you come out the other side better because of it?
There's so many. It really is. This career is like an abusive relationship in a lot of ways, but you just can't. You're so in love that you have to just keep going. But I think the biggest challenge for me, kind of overarching over the whole past, 15 years of my time in this career, is kind of being told by whomever, society, a conservatory, your parents, friends, teachers, that you have to decide when you are like 17 what success is going to look like at any certain point in the future. And we don't know anything about anything at that point. And so we're
Yeah.
supposed to have this idea of what life should look like when we're 25, 28, 30, 33, and in order to have been successful, this is what my life has to look like. Um, and I think as you're going through life, and especially in this career, that feeling of failure when your life doesn't look like those things is just completely overwhelming. And whoever it is that we feel like we are disappointing is often not the source of that anxiety. It's usually uh, ourselves. So, I didn't have 7 Broadway credits and 2 Tony Awards by 28, but does that mean that I failed? No. But to the naive 17-year-old with like big bad Broadway dreams, it feels like I failed. So the conversation that has helped me kind of get through that feeling is the conversation that exists between myself now and then this sounds very like woo woo but like it's between me and my younger self, and sort of explaining to her, hey, I know you had this idea of what this was going to look like, but the reality of it is that this is really hard and very painful at times, and it's okay for your idea of what success is to change. And being able to recognize, when something isn't providing you anymore with the same kind of joy or stability or happiness or ambitions that it used to, is in itself a success. And then you can sort of refocus and adjust that idea and make room for what a more informed success can look like.
Yeah, I love your take on that and how that realization that things haven't gone the way you thought they would in your 17-year-old mind, is actually success in of itself. The fact
Yeah.
that you didn't achieve it and to enlighten you and open your eyes up to what you really are passionate about and where you want to go. And I think that's such a good thing about this industry, and why I love talking to so many people on this podcast is because this industry is giant, and
Hmm.
there's so many aspects of it that if you are 17 and you have these dreams of being on Broadway or being in the movies and being a star, and that's not something that eventuates for you, it doesn't mean that the arts or the entertainment industry is done for you. There's so many
Right.
different parts of this industry, and
Yeah.
we just continually evolve. And I love that about this industry. And
Yeah.
we're able to have these discussions and open up all the different possibilities of what you could possibly do in this
Yeah.
industry.
I think when you're young, it's like it feels like Broadway or bust, like
For sure.
either I'm gonna make it doing this exact thing on this exact kind of stage, or I failed, and as I got older and spent more time in New York and then kind of recognized who I was as a performer and as an artist and just as a human, I realized that my loyalty is not in performing. My loyalty really lies with this art form that I believe in so much. I have a passion for the art of musical theater. And so, any way that I can contribute to that, ideally, of course, I want it to be as a performer. But if it's not that, if it's as an educator, if it's as a voice teacher, or if it's as a writer, or stage manager, or whatever it is, then that matters more to me than exactly what I thought it was supposed to be. Does that make
Absolutely.
sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And really, when it comes down to defining success, it's a personal thing. One person's
Hmm.
success is another person's failure, and vice versa.
Right. If any friend of mine said, I'm exhausted and my heart is hurting from this career and I just can't do it anymore and I'm leaving New York, I would never say to them, well, you failed ever, because I didn't.
Absolutely.
I would never feel that way, but we are so quick to say it to ourselves. When I decided, okay, I'm ready to leave New York, and that doesn't mean I'm done performing at all. It doesn't mean I'm done with New York, but it's very easy to say, oh, you're leaving, you surrendered, you gave up, you failed, and it's just not true. It's just not the truth. It's just this like little voice inside of you that has a very small perspective on what success looks like. So
Absolutely.
it's, yeah, worth it to expand that
For sure.
for sure.
Well, let's move on to this next section, to a time that I like to call your spotlight moment. That one moment in time you realized, yes, I am going to make this entertainment industry work for me and as a career. Or maybe it was, yes, this is what I need to be doing in this entertainment industry. Tell us about
Mhm.
that.
So I don't think for me it's one moment, although I do remember seeing the tour of Once on This Island as a kid and learning, like, talking to my mom that this was like a job. This was something people did and could get paid for. And I was like, what? This is a job? I could do this
Yeah,
thing I love and make a living. And I think I kind of was sold on that idea from then on. But for me, I think my spotlight moments are always kind of in rehearsals. My favorite part of the whole business is the collaboration and the creation process.
mm,
Uh, and if I could make a living just being in rehearsals, I would. Like, performing is just sort of the icing on the cake, but really for me, the place I feel the most alive and the most useful and inspired is in the rehearsal process. Um, so, and that's, I feel very lucky because I've gotten to do so much of that, because the majority of the work I did in New York was new workshops and readings of new shows. I was involved with NYU's grad musical theater writing program, which is an amazing program and awesome if you as a performer can get involved, because you get to go in and basically do these their 90-minute product, like their grad thesis musicals that they have written, and you just go in and you learn it and you perform it like 3 days later, and it's awesome. And so there's nothing better than being like the first person to play a role or to sing a song, and that creation is contagious, and those rooms full of artists making something new and hopefully profound and important in whatever way it's trying to is the reason I keep doing this. So those moments for me are more of the spotlight moments more than it is actual spotlight.
yeah, for sure. I love that. And
Yeah.
I I also am right there with you. Some of my fondest memories of any show that I was a part of, it was always a new
Hmm.
show. It was a new creation,
Hmm.
and it was being built on you. And
Yeah, it's really exciting.
it's so yeah, and it's on another level compared to going to something that's already set, and you're just
Hmm.
learning the choreo or learning the blocking, and that's all fine, and that's a lot of great things with that. But to have stuff set on you and to have things, you do entire scenes and everything, and that just gets scrapped, you know,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh man, that was so much work for nothing. But it's not for nothing. It's just part of the
Yeah, it's not.
process.
It's all, yeah, it's exactly. And I think there's a lot of focus in the industry put on the product, which makes sense. Of course, it's
Yeah,
inherently a commercial art form, and that's what it's for. But I think sometimes people lose the process in looking for the product. Even when you go into an audition, you kind of, at least for me, your mindset is like, okay, I have to be what they want. I have to be this finished thing of what they want. And that is impossible to do. So it's so much more important to like keep just depending on the process of it, because that's what makes it thrive and makes it continue. So that's the part I like to focus on,
yeah, I love
the
that.
process. Yeah.
Well, let's piggyback on that last question a bit
Okay.
and let's talk about your number one booked it moment. Walk us through that day, what was going on in your life, and what about that moment makes it your favorite booked it moment?
I love the inflection every time.
Thank
Booked
you.
it. So I got very lucky, and I at the time it was lucky. Now I don't know. I don't know what I would advise somebody right out of college to do about getting their equity card. But I felt lucky that right out of college, I got my card doing Ian Albert from New York Theater, um, and because I had gotten my card from doing that, I was able to attend chorus calls and equity principal auditions that you know most people right out of school are not able to, or have to wait all day, um, you know crossing their fingers that they'll get seen. So I went to the equity chorus call for Jerry Springer the opera, and a lot of times people don't, you know shows are required to have chorus calls and equity principal calls because they have to give the equity members an opportunity. But a lot of times they're not actually looking for people, or they're required to have them. So I
Yeah.
felt very lucky that I got to go. And then from that call, I went in and I sang Glitter and Be Gay. And I mean, I had been in New York for maybe 3 or 4 months. And I got a call back. And I mean, I sang 16 bars of the song and I got a call back. And then I went to the call back, and it was Stephen Aremus was the musical director. And he's, one of the biggest Broadway musical directors and orchestrators right now. He did Wicked, Avenue Q, and Frozen, among many more. And he was in the room, and like maybe one other casting director from Telsey. And all he said was, "Drick, just sing what you sang, at the course call." So I sang some Glitter and Be Gay, and he just said something like, "Wow, okay, thanks." And I left, and I was like, "Okay, well, that was
That was it?
cool. That was cool." Like, but there were no sides, there was nothing else, and so I assumed, I didn't get it. But I got a call like a few weeks later with an offer, and I nearly died on the street. And I
Yeah.
called my dad. Was like the first person I called, and he's got a lot of dad jokes, and one of his is, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice,
Yeah.
practice. So I called and I said, "Dad, how do you get to Carnegie Hall?" And he, of course, knew the old standard joke and said it. And I said, "No, you're me." It was stupid, but I told him, and I cried and felt so grateful to be equity and got that opportunity to just be in that room. And it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. People can book shows from those calls, which is awesome. Yeah, I was really lucky. I was 22, and that was like my proudest moment for a long time. That was my booked it moment.
Yes, I love it. It's a great story.
Oh, thanks.
Well, let's take a moment to talk about the present. What
Hmm.
projects are you working on now? What are you looking forward to? And of course, we are amidst this crazy global pandemic. How
Yep.
do you see the entertainment industry moving forward in the next couple of years?
Um, it's a tough time to have a real answer for that, to have an answer of that this is what I'm doing next, because
Yeah,
so many things are
100%.
just on pause. So before I left New York, I had been doing a bunch of, probably for the past like year and a half now, I've been doing a bunch of workshops for a new musical, um, written by BD Wong and Wayne Barker. Very exciting. And it's been such a good time. And they were supposed to have their first production of it at Ogunquit Theater, in Maine this August, and of course it got postponed along with the rest of their season. So that was a bummer, because I was it's like this beacon of light, to look forward to. But hopefully it will. I'm sure it will happen again. It'll just be postponed and it'll be in the future, because it's such a great show and it's a great team, just great team of people. So instead of that, I just moved to San Diego. I'm looking forward to seeing what I'll end up doing here for performing. There's so many great theaters out here. Once auditions kind of get back into the swing and slowly, everything kind of keeps opening up. That'll be a great, thing for me to get to jump into. I also will probably always do my cabarets, which is, again, like, that's been something that's helped me through this entire career, because you go through times where you just don't have the outlet for the creativity and for the performer in you and all that stuff. So I made sure that I created it myself. And I have really loved doing cabarets. So there's a great spot here in San Diego called Martinis Above Fourth, where I did stuff when I was in grad school that hopefully I'll pick that relationship back up. Those guys are great. And then I'm still teaching privately, coaching voice lessons via Skype even, or Zoom, and applying. And then I'll continue to apply to the academia world again, and just slowly going to see what the possibilities are for me out here. And as for the business industry moving forward in the next couple of years, I think it's going to be interesting, to see the recovery from all this COVID-19 stuff. But I think it's going to be, there's going to be an explosion of really interesting work that comes out of it, because everybody's so ready to do it again, so I think
Yeah.
there's just going to be like a nice boom of creativity that's going to come out of this.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm looking
agree.
forward to that. Hmm.
Well, let's move on to one of my favorite sections in the interview. I call it the Grease Lightning round. I am going to ask you a handful of questions. I want you to answer
Great.
them as quickly and concisely as possible, one after another. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. First question. What was the one thing holding you back from committing to a career as an entertainer?
Fear of failure, lack of belief in my own worthiness.
For sure.
Hmm.
Such a common feeling for, I
Hmm.
think, almost all of us. I don't know anyone actually that has not
Yeah.
been plagued by that.
I mean, when you watch even the Elaine Stritch documentary, or the Joan Rivers documentary, all these amazing performers that you're
Yeah,
like, yes, those are people who made it. It is so amazing to see that they still have all of this self-doubt and insecurity, even though to us they're like, the peak of art and celebrity and all of this, and it's so interesting because it doesn't matter really how successful you get, it's still there. It's just
absolutely.
always there. Yeah.
For sure.
It's a hard thing. Yeah.
And the second question, what is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Okay, this was impossible because I have received so much good advice. So I'm going to give you advice to go surround yourself with friends that give really good advice. That's my advice, because I've had such a plethora of amazing advice from my family and my friends my whole life. I can't even pick one thing. So
I love it. I love
that's my
that
cop
take.
out
I love that
answer.
take. No, it's fantastic. Third question, what is something that is working for you now? Or if you'd like to go pre COVID, what was working for you before our industry went on pause?
So this is a tough one to keep concise, but I'm going to do my best.
Yeah,
So auditioning sucks. It's just no fun for anybody. And I had to really rewire my thought process of it. And I kind of figured it out for myself for a while, and it really helped. So if I can share that, maybe it will help somebody else who's feeling angry and frustrated at the business. But I had to kind of go remember at the core what I love about this art form. And for me, it's the collaboration. So instead of going into an audition and trying to be right and, do everything I thought I was supposed to do and not be mad at the casting director for not looking up, I need to just go in there and do what I love, which is to collaborate. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to bring my song, and I'm going to collaborate with the composer and the lyricist and the accompanist. And I'm going to do what I love, and the casting director can look up or not, because I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for the fellow artists that have given me this opportunity and these beautiful pieces of work that I get to collaborate with them on. And that really helped me take the pressure off and just make the whole experience more enjoyable. So that was what was working for me.
I love that. And I think that is such great advice for anyone auditioning, new,
Yeah.
old, all of it.
Yeah. Cause it's no fun.
No, of course, it's a necessary evil of
Yeah,
of this industry,
exactly.
isn't it?
Yep.
And the fourth question: what is the best resource, whether that's a book, a movie, a YouTube video, maybe a podcast, maybe a piece of technology that you found is helping your career right now?
So the book Acting Power by Robert Cohen, which was assigned in Steve McConnell's junior year BOCO acting class, is still one of my favorites. It just simplifies acting, and sometimes actors get way too like actory about
Mhm.
things, and this sort of strips it down to just, this is a human experience. And I like that book still a lot. Matt Farnsworth, he's a great voice teacher in New York City. And I used to study with him, but he has an app on the phone, a voice lesson app, and it's really great. So I recommend that. If you can't, afford lessons or you just don't have the accessibility to them, he's just a brilliant voice teacher. So that has been great. And then if you are in New York City, Aaron Galligan Steerle and VP Boyle's class, they have a musical theater forum class. It's really amazing. It's probably on hiatus right now because of COVID, but when that things come back, that was a really great class that really focused on figuring out like who you are in the business, and getting past the boxes and the types and all of that stuff. And he brings in casting directors, but it's not like, it doesn't feel like a pay to play thing. It's much more of a, this is what I see when I see you perform, and this is, it's a much more open conversation than I feel some casting director workshops are. And he does a great job. Aaron was my teacher at the time, but I think VP Boyle is back now doing it as well. But they do a really good job of facilitating that conversation in a very constructive way, that feels much more human than the typical interaction can be between, an actor and a casting director, or an actor and an agent, or,
Yeah,
so I
those are
recommend
great
that.
resources. Thank you.
Hmm.
And the fifth question: if you had to start your career from scratch, but still had all the knowledge and experience you've collected from your career in this industry, what would you do or not do? Would you do anything differently or would you keep it the same?
I don't think I would do that many things differently. I think there's a lot of stuff I wish I had abandoned the idea of sooner, like the idea of type. I think that's a bad on a lot of conservatories training, and it's not their fault. It's just what this business is. But they sort of make you think that you have to fit these boxes. And if you don't, you're screwed and nobody knows what to do with you, which is unfortunately true a lot of the time. But I'm kind of just, F those boxes. Let's just tell a whole bunch of different stories with all different kinds of people, and let's blur those lines and, understand that all different kinds of people have all different kinds of experiences, and they're all stories worth telling. And I think I'd probably get my mind in that place sooner if I could.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
And the last question: what is the golden nugget knowledge drop you've learned from your successful career in this industry you'd like to leave with our listeners?
I think nothing and no one is all one thing. Like success is not just one thing, as I talked about in the beginning of this. Broadway is not the be all end all marker of making it. Being a performer doesn't make you an artist. There's a lot more options to be successful artist than you think. That would be my golden nugget.
I love that.
Thanks.
And to wrap up this interview, it is time to give yourself a plug. Where can we find you? How do our listeners connect with you? Is there anything you want to promote?
Well, I'm on Instagram, Sashi Pashi, and YouTube, also Sashi Pashi.
Yes.
And my website, which I designed myself, and I do some freelance web design if you ever need that. I'm really great at actor websites. So my website is sashaweiss.com. And then if you need any web design help with anything, it's svbweb.com. I really am trying to focus a lot on helping women who are trying to start their own businesses and helping them with creating their brand or whatever it is that they want. So again, that's just like a side thing that I like to do. And if anybody in any area really wants coachings or voice lessons or a history of musical theater course or whatever it is, I am available and around.
I love it. All right, yeah. Sasha, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been fantastic to have you on.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure to get to chat with you again after so many years.
Give it up for today's 5-star reviewers, Mickey93, Acton Bro, and MC in New York. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for joining us today. My one call to action for you is to go to youbookeditpodcast.com and join our free email community, where we dig deep into a continually growing resource of truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you advance your entertainment career. Don't miss an episode. We have a new guest 7 days a week. Search for You Booked It on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app and subscribe today. All the best to you. We'll see you tomorrow.